Bright QT. Every student matters.
Hello everyone. So let's start our next topic here, that is Gandhiji as a leader. Now students, here we are continuing our first topic that we have learnt. That was about the idea of Satyagraha. Now before that students, you already have learnt about the impact of First World War and also how it was one of the factors that led to the rise of this feeling of nationalism among the common people living in India. Then we saw how Gandhiji he came to India and he took on the leadership for the masses, right? For the common people who were quite confused as in whom to follow and how they should challenge or oppose the British government. Why? Because it was this anti-colonial feeling that somehow led to the rise of nationalism in our country. Now before that, we have seen many revolts that took place against the British government. But those revolts were not all India or pan-Indian revolt. These were the regional revolts, the tribal revolts, or the revolts that were not distorted at different places, right? So here we see that it was the anti-colonial feeling. Now they had to channelize this feeling in right direction. And who was there to give this right direction? It was Mahatma Gandhi himself who became the leader of the masses. Now students, you have understood the idea of Satyagraha, the meaning of Satyagraha that we have already discussed. Now here we are going to see how this Satyagraha, the whole idea, was being applied in these different movements. Now once Gandhiji he came to India, he started going from one place to another, meeting the people, understanding what problems they were facing. Meanwhile, there were three main movements that took place, and Satyagraha as a tool was used against the British government. So one by one, we are going to talk about all the Satyagraha movement that was being launched here, right? So in the year 1917, Champaran Satyagraha was launched. That was to inspire the peasants to struggle against the oppressive plantation system. One by one students, we are going to talk about all these Satyagraha movements in detail. Again in the year 1917, Kheda Satyagraha took place. Now the peasants of Kheda, they could not pay the revenue and were demanding that revenue collection should be relaxed. Third important movement was in 1918 when Gandhiji he went to Ahmedabad to organize a Satyagraha movement amongst the cotton mill workers. So we are going to talk about them here. Firstly, let's talk about the Champaran Satyagraha that happened in the year 1917. Now this is one of the movements that we are going to talk about. So definitely we can say that it was the first Satyagraha campaign that was started by Gandhiji. So you have to remember this point here that the Champaran Satyagraha was the first Satyagraha movement launched by Gandhiji. Civil disobedience in nature, right? So it was civil disobedience and the tool here used was the Satyagraha, right? So let us see where is this Champaran. Champaran is a small district in the northwestern part of Bihar under European indigo planters. Now we are talking about the 19th century, right? So in 19th century, what are we seeing here? Now Champaran is a small district in the northwestern region of Bihar, and this was under the European indigo planters. Now have you heard the term indigo, students? So the term indigo is basically it was a plant or the cash crop as we can say that was. Now the Europeans they had the trait of indigo, right? They used to transport or they used to send it from one place to another, right? They were trading in this indigo plant. So therefore what happened? The condition to grow indigo in Champaran was quite good. And the European planters, did they want? They wanted the peasants who were living in Champaran to grow indigo there. Now, what was the main issue here? So, these peasants, they were forcefully asked to grow indigo and some other cash crops that was now sent by these Europeans to other places, and they used to gain much more profit in return. But what happened to the peasants? They did not have enough land to grow the common crops, the crops that they needed for their food, as in rice, wheat, bajra, so on. So these common crops, they were not able to grow this, right? So therefore peasants, they were quite sad with this whole idea of European indigo planters and how they were forced to grow indigo in their own land, right? And also they had to pay high revenue. So high land revenue was also being paid by these peasants. So they were not having crops, so they were not able to eat food, and also in return they had to pay revenue. So therefore the condition for the peasants was quite bad here. So there was a common man whose name was Rajkumar Shukla. So when he heard the news that Gandhiji is going around places, so he went and met Gandhiji and asked him to come and visit Champaran. So here what happened? All these Europeans, they practiced all kinds of operation against the peasants, like I have told you right now. So when Gandhiji he visited Champaran, he launched a Satyagraha movement against the high revenues that was demanded by the European indigo planters. As a result of it, inquiry committee was appointed in the year 1970. Now people were watching how Gandhiji started this Satyagraha movement in Champaran, and people were not aware of it. So everything was quite new for all these people, right? So the news was spreading like a forest fire, and therefore as a result of it, inquiry committee was set up in the year 1970 to look into this issue of the peasants. Finally, Champaran Agrarian Act, it was passed that freed the peasants from special taxes levied by the indigo planters. Yes, so all the peasants who had to give special taxes that was being asked by the indigo planters, they were totally freed from it, right? So it was a huge relief for the Champaran peasants. So this is how the first Satyagraha movement, it started in our country. The second one is the Kheda campaign that happened in the year 1918. So it was against the British government, definitely. 1918, there was a severe drought in Kheda along with crop failure, right? So somewhere in 1917-18, what happened? So in this region, Kheda, there was this severe drought that took place, right? So also along with this, the crops also failed, right? The crops were destroyed in large number. As a result of it, what happened? Bombay government, they insisted on extracting its land revenue. Yes. So here what are we seeing? That all these peasants, they had to pay land revenue. And here what are we seeing? Because of the severe drought, there was crop failure. And therefore, the peasants, they were not able to pay these high revenues. As you can see, this is Kheda in this region, pointed out in the map here. Now, land revenue rules, it provided for remission of land revenue if there was crop failure and the crops were not grown for more than 25% in that region. So here we see that land revenue rules, it said that people could not give or not pay the revenue, or the revenue could be cancelled, right? If the crops were not grown then more than the 25%, right? So what happened here? Gandhiji again, he took on the leadership and he organized the Satyagraha movement that lasted till June 1918. It also established Gandhiji as the leader of the masses. Now he was going from one place to another and he was becoming this leader, the leader that people wanted to see and wanted to follow. And therefore, after this Khera campaign also, he became the leader of the masses, leader of the common people. The next here is Ahmedabad Satyagraha that happened in the year 1918. So we are seeing that consistently Gandhiji is now organizing a lot of Satyagraha movements here. So Satyagraha movement was started by the cotton mill workers in Ahmedabad. Gandhiji, he decided to fast unto death to strengthen the workers' demands. That was to increase their wages. They were working in very unjust environment, unjust condition, and they wanted to increase their wages. That was one of the demands of these cotton mill workers. So finally, pressurized by this Gandhiji's move, the mill owners, they agreed to give 35% hike, 35% increase in the wages to the workers. So these were the three main Satyagraha movements that was launched by Mahatma Gandhi when he came back from South Africa to India. So it's really important these are really important movement, student. Why? Because it mobilized the supporters and everyone, they saw Gandhiji as their leader. That was really needed during that period, right? So coming back to our exercise section here, in multiple choice questions, there is a question that says, which was the first Satyagraha launched by Gandhiji in India? We have four options here: Champaran Satyagraha, Kheda, Ahmedabad cotton mill workers, and none of these. So the correct answer, as we all know, is the Champaran Satyagraha that took place in the year 1917. Very important question. You have to remember that the first Satyagraha movement was launched in the year 1917 at Champaran. And where is it located? Northwestern part of Bihar. Okay. Second question is, name the two main Satyagraha movements organized by Mahatma Gandhi successfully in the favor of peasants in 1917-18. Now read the question carefully. Here we are talking about the peasants. So what were these two important Satyagraha movements? So the first one is the Champaran and the second one is the Kheda. Now when we are talking about Ahmedabad Satyagraha, you might question that why are we not taking that name? So in Ahmedabad, the peasants were not fighting, it was the cotton mill workers who were fighting there, right? So here you have to mention about Champaran Satyagraha and Kheda Satyagraha. These were the peasant movements and it was against the oppressive rule of these European planters, right? And Kheda was against the government there, the Bombay government, right? Who was asking for high revenue despite crop failure. Correct? So you have to answer this question like this. Mention these two Satyagraha movements and write 2 or 3 lines about them.